Many years ago, when I was living in the UK, the country went through a serious sugar shortage. It wasn't just a minor inconvenience. Shops were rationing supplies, shelves were empty, and people were genuinely stressed over something as basic as sugar. Tea without sugar, for most of us, felt almost unthinkable. After weeks of checking different shops, I finally managed to get hold of 2 precious £2 bags. I remember feeling oddly proud as I carried them home, as if I'd just secured contraband. Sugar had become that valuable. At the time, I was living in rented accommodation known as a bedsit. It was essentially one large room with a small kitchenette sectioned off by a thin partition. Storage space was minimal. There were no proper cupboards, just a single cabinet fixed high on the wall. That's where I kept my sugar, poured into a plastic container with a tight lid. Every Friday afternoon, my landlady would come to collect the rent. I wasn't usually home when she arrived, so I left the money inside my rent book, placed neatly on top of the sugar caddy. It had been that way for months, and there had never been any issues. At least, not at first. One afternoon, while making a cup of tea, I opened the sugar container and paused. Something felt off. The level seemed slightly lower than I remembered. I dismissed it, assuming my memory was playing tricks on me. After all, stress was high, and sugar was being used carefully, but still used. A few days later, I noticed it again. The container was visibly emptier. Then, after rent collection that Friday, it was lower still. By the following week, the sugar was almost gone. I knew I hadn't used that much. I lived alone. I drank maybe 2 cups of tea a day. Even during a shortage, that amount didn't make sense. Around the same time, I ran into a couple of friends who lived in the adjacent house. They casually mentioned that they seemed to be going through sugar far faster than usual. One of them joked that maybe they were sleep eating. That joke didn't feel funny. We started comparing notes. How often did we buy sugar? How much did we use? How quickly was it disappearing? The answer was obvious. Someone was stealing it. We spoke to the other tenants in my building. Every single one had the same story. Sugar mysteriously vanishing, always slowly, always over time. Never enough to be immediately obvious, just enough to drain containers dry. There was only one common link. Our landlady. She had access to every room. She collected rent weekly. She always came when most of us were either busy or not home, and she always lingered in the kitchenette areas under the excuse of checking something. Confronting her directly felt pointless. There was no proof, just suspicion, and accusing a landlady during a housing shortage wasn't exactly a smart move. So instead, we decided to do something else. Something quieter. Something smarter. We agreed not to stop the theft, but to change what was being taken. One tenant mixed salt into the remaining sugar. Another added a fizzy children's candy called Space Dust, which was extremely popular at the time. I went a step further and mixed in liver salts, a harmless substance, but one that would certainly make its presence known if consumed unknowingly. We didn't alter the look too much. The containers still looked normal, still tempting. Then we waited. Friday came right on schedule. The landlady arrived, collected the rent, smiled and left. Nothing unusual, no confrontation, no reaction. The real change came the following week. She looked unwell. Her face was pale. She seemed irritable, snapping at small things. One tenant overheard her complaining about stomach problems to someone on the phone. Another noticed she kept asking for water. By the next Friday, it was impossible to miss. She stormed into the building visibly angry and accused us of tampering with food and trying to poison her. Her words came out in a rush, fueled by panic rather than logic. That's when one of us calmly asked a simple question. "Why were you eating our sugar?" She froze. The silence that followed was deafening. There was no denial, no explanation, just a stunned expression as she realized she'd exposed herself completely. She muttered something about ungrateful tenants and left without collecting a single complaint. After that, the sugar thefts stopped overnight. She no longer entered our rooms without permission. Rent collection became quick and strictly professional, and she never again placed anything on top of our cabinets or looked us directly in the eye. We never reported her, we never escalated it. We didn't need to. She learned her lesson the hard way, using her own greed. During a shortage, she tried to take from people who had very little. And in the end, the only thing she stole was her own peace. Sometimes the best revenge isn't loud. It's patient. And sometimes karma doesn't need help. Just a little sugar, teacup without handle,